We're going to switch gears again and go back to Senate Bill 6419 on our calendar today concerning implementation of the recommendations of the December 2019 report from the William R. Ruckelshaus Center regarding residential habilitation center clients. Kevin and Senator Kaiser, if you want to move forward, that would be fine.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kevin Black, staff to this committee. Before you is Senate Bill 6419, sponsored by Senator Kaiser, who's with us this afternoon. Senate Bill 6419 relates to persons with developmental disabilities who reside in residential habilitation centers and other supported living settings around the state. There are 4 residential habilitation centers currently operated by the Department of Social and Health Services Developmental Disability Administration, including Fircrest, Lakeland Village, the Rainier School, and Yakima Valley School. In 2019, the budget, with some funding by the operating budget, the Department of Social and Health Services contracted with the William D. Ruckelshaus Center to facilitate meetings and discussions about appropriate levels of care for residential habilitation center clients. The outcome of that work was a report published in November entitled Rethinking Intellectual and Developmental Disability Policy to Empower Clients, Develop Providers, and Improve Services. That report contained recommendations calling for actions to be staged over the next 3 years. The actions which are supposed to be implemented in 2020 include expansion of state-operated living alternatives, beginning the process of rebuilding the Fircrest nursing facility by commissioning design plans, and expanding the Family Mentor Project. What this bill would do is it would direct the Developmental Disability Administration to develop a plan to implement the recommendations of the Ruckelshaus report, including a financing plan, by November 1st, 2020. A final plan would be submitted to the governor and legislature by September of 2021. The legislation also creates a joint executive and legislative task force to oversee the development of this plan. The members of the task force must include the governor or governor's representative, one member of each of the 4 major legislative caucuses, and the secretary of DSHS or her designee. The task force must meet with and provide updates to specified stakeholders, and the reports must address, consider, and advance the recommendations of the Ruckelshaus report. A fiscal note was requested but has not yet been received. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, Kevin, the family mentoring program, is that parent to parent? Is that what we're talking about? No.
It looks like Senator Kaiser knows the answer to that question.
Right. And she'll answer it later in her intro. Thank you, Kevin. I wanted to warn everyone in the audience, we have a dozen people that are signed up for this bill, some pro, some con. I'm asking you now to look at your notes and pare it down to a 2-minute presentation maximum, and we will be having the lights there. And it's amazing the things you can cover in 2 minutes, and so I think it'll be fair. So Senator Kaiser, you can talk a little longer than 2 minutes on your bill. So
I'll try not to.
It's a big bill, so we want to make sure, as with the staff presentation, that we are understanding its intent and what it's going to do.
First of all, thank you, Senator Darnielle, as chair of this committee, and all the members for your interest and attention. It is a big bill, and I want to thank Kevin for summarizing the bill that's before you. It's the result of 3 decades of conflict that have finally gotten resolved. It's an amazing process to sit at the table for 18 months, which is what the parties did, and share and discuss in a civil way the different perspectives and concerns that we all had. The process was guided by the center at UW called the Ruckelshaus Center, and it was a very slow but steady and ultimately successful process. So I just want you to know that this did not happen overnight. This happened over months and months of meetings. But in the end, we gave you a report that Kevin referred to, and I have a copy here for you, that was signed off by Senator Braun and myself, Representative June Robinson, and Representative Chris Corey. Terry Anderson, representing the Friends of Fircrest, Jeff Carter, representing the Friends of Rainier, Matt Zuvich, representing the Washington Federation of State Employees, Lindsay Grad, representing the service employees, Sue Elliott, representing the ARC, Julia Bell, representing the Developmental Disabilities Council, as well as Bill Moss, Assistant Secretary of Aging and Long-Term Support, Amber Leaders from the Governor's Office, and Evelyn Perez, the Developmental Disabilities Administrator. We all sat at the table for 18 months, meeting at least once a month, and we got to a real agreement on how to rethink the way we care for our clients who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we came up with a process that will take 3, maybe 4 years to develop with our RHCs, which are the 4 campuses around the state, that will provide top quality health care and nursing home care for those who are appropriately in a nursing home setting, top quality stabilization and crisis care for those who need stabilization or crisis care, and top quality community care for those individuals who can transfer to the community. The key here, Senator Braun and I agreed throughout the process, was quality of care, not money. Quality of care is the key here. We think with quality of care and this process, eventually there will be cost savings as well, but that's not the goal of this report. It is a real transformation in our approach to folks who have developmental and intellectual disabilities. The culture has changed. It used to be that doctors told parents that if their child was born with Down syndrome or some other issue, that they should take them to Fircrest or Rainier or Lakeland Village or Yakima and leave them for life, essentially. The federal government has intervened in that approach and said these are intermediate care facilities, ICFs. That means they're temporary. They are not lifelong residences for anyone. So we lost certification of many of our different campuses at various times and many of our different residences, wings and so forth, and have fought to claw back certification. When you lose certification, you lose the Medicaid dollars. So it's not something you can really afford to allow to happen. The writing was on the wall that the process of decertification was continuing at all ICFs that had permanent residents. So we developed an approach that's an alternative approach that we think will give quality care to all of our clients and provide better community care as well.
Questions for the sponsor? Thank you very much, Senator Kaiser. Important bill.
Thank you.
Actually, she needs to answer my question.
Oh, yes. The Family Mentor Program was developed at Fircrest, and it was developed about 15 years ago now, to work with family members who had a client at the campus that they wanted to move into the community. And the family mentor would answer questions and deal with anxieties. This was a new idea 15 years ago to have individuals go into the community. It's not new anymore. And in fact, virtually all of our young clients are in the community. They're not at the facilities anymore.
Sounds more like a facilitator position or something like that might assist the family with the logistics of making that move. But our parent-to-parent program is across the state in all of our communities, and we hope that
that's right.
It remains strong as well, because I think that's great for a family to be able to talk to another family that has gone through that and can kind of guide them through the process with their child. So thank you. I appreciate the answer.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Perfect. We'll bring up the first panel, and just as a reminder, it'll be a 2-minute clock just because we want to respect everybody's time. The first group, we'll go down the list, is Julia Bell, David Lord, and also Carrie Cunningham Rosvick.
Good afternoon, Chair Darnell and members of the Human Services, Reentry, and Rehabilitation Committee. My name is Julia Bell, and I am here to express the Developmental Disabilities Council's strong support for Senate Bill 6419. I'm the chair of the State Developmental Disabilities Council and the parent of an adult daughter with developmental disabilities, who lived previously for 4 years in an institutional setting, but now lives with us. I also have about 38 years experience as a disability rights advocate at the state and federal level. I served on the work group that spent 2 years working to achieve consensus on a wide range of recommendations to address critical problems within the service system, and especially in meeting the needs of those individuals currently in residential rehabilitation centers. These problems have jeopardized federal funding and limited the capacity of the state to address the needs of persons with developmental disabilities and their families. We were able, in spite of very different perspectives and priorities, to agree on key action steps to be accomplished over the next several years to make services for persons with DD more available, more appropriate, and more comprehensive, while assuring effective use of state dollars and preserving vital federal funding. Senate Bill 6419 establishes the framework to achieve the next steps outlined in the December 2019 report and incorporates all of the recommendations and critical components to be included in the comprehensive plan required by this legislation. There have been reports, there have been studies, we've been grappling with this for years, but never before has this level of consensus been achieved that is in the December 2019 report among diverse segments of the service delivery system and advocates. While there are fewer than 400 individuals now being served in residential rehabilitation centers in Washington state, the improvements and innovations to be accomplished pursuant to the recommendations of the December 2019 report will benefit all individuals with developmental disabilities who receive services from the state.
Can you quickly wrap up, please?
We urge your support for Senate Bill 6419 and your continued investment in achieving necessary and important improvements in the DD service system. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair Darnielle and members of the Senate Human Services Committee. I'm David Lord, and I work for Disability Rights Washington. And we've signed in opposed to this legislation, and I should be quick to add that we are very supportive of all the language about moving us further into supporting people in the community. We really strongly believe in that. Our concern is that this commission got it wrong in one major place, and that is in supporting the development, or excuse me, the building of a new nursing home on the campus of Fircrest. And that's an investment of $6.5 million this year just for the design, and then another $100 million in the coming year or years to develop that. We don't think, besides the fact that that's an expensive proposition, we don't think that's an appropriate proposition. People with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities can be supported in the community, and they can be supported in SOLAs, in adult family homes, in all kinds of different settings. I'm talking about people with significant needs, people that have high acuity needs, people that are eligible for nursing home level of care. So those individuals can be supported. And what happened, I guess, in this report is they took a look at whether or not there were nursing homes around that could support individuals and found that there weren't any. But actually, what I think really would work would be SOLAs and other kinds of community arrangements. The last thing I want to say is that I think this is also, by building this kind of facility, the state puts itself at risk of violating the LC versus Olmstead decision, the Americans with Disabilities Act for most integrated setting that's appropriate to a person. And I think that's a risk that the state shouldn't take, especially when the proper thing, the right thing to do is to support people in the community. Thank you.
In your analysis, did you think that there was any nursing home that is appropriate for a person with this level of need for care?
Well, we didn't look at all the nursing homes, in the state. I think that was one of the things that the department did, was look at other nursing homes and see if they were appropriate. So I think that's what they did. What we're advocating is that the people that are currently in the nursing home, or served in the Y buildings at FercWest, that there be a real close look at those individuals, at what it would take to support them in the community in supported living. As I said, people with similar needs are supported in the community, and they could be supported in the community, and we think they should. And we think that would both be less expensive and also more advantageous in a lot of ways.
Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 6419. My name is Carrie Cunningham Rosvik. I'm the parent of a young adult daughter who was born with Cornelia de Lange syndrome, rare genetic syndrome. She's served by Community Resources, a supported living agency in Olympia. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner and an advocate. I'm speaking as a parent and as a professional. I agree with the key points of the plan outlined in the report from the Ruckelshaus House Center. We must downsize the RHCs and build community-based housing. But I also have concerns about the plan. There's a focus on state-operated living alternatives, SOLAs, as people transition from the RHCs. I don't see enough emphasis on building other community-based housing options, including supported living that is so desperately needed. Many believe that supported living and SOLAs are the same, but they are not at all. They're both in the community, but SOLAs are about placement, not being placed or being placed to live in a SOLA. Supported living is about choice. Live in a person's home with necessary supports to be successful. My daughter has choice. She is level 5 in terms of service needs. She could qualify to be in an RHC, but we've always wanted her to be a part of her community. Community Resources helped us find a place for her to live, and she struggled significantly when she moved. I was afraid they were not going to be able to keep her there and that she wouldn't be successful, but they worked with her because they'd made an investment, and she has been successful. She's lived in her home with total support shares with another young woman for 5 years, and it's been very, very good for all of us. I asked one of our daughter's caregivers about the philosophy of supported living, and she shared, here at Community Resources, we will do whatever it takes to support people in the community, whether it's behavioral support, physical, cognitive, emotional support. We assist in all ways for someone to be successful and live in the community. Thank you for your time and attention. As we move forward with this plan, we owe it to people with intellectual disabilities and their families to provide not just a placement in the community, but a home and a choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bring up the next panel. Matt Zavich, Sue Elliott, and Kelly Nesbitt.
Weird combos.
I'm not following
you. You're all rushing to the mic to beat Sue.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Chair, members of the committee, I'm Sue Elliott with the ARC of Washington State, and I'm going to give you a little historical perspective. In 1914, the state legislature created the first state school for children with intellectual disabilities. It was over just east of Spokane at Medical Lake called Lakeland Village. And in 1936, there were a group of parents who wanted additional schools created because they didn't all want to have to go across the state in 1936 to visit their kids. And so they created this organization. Originally it was called the Children's Benevolent League. It later on became the ARC of Washington State. The families were very successful. Over time, they created in total 6 state schools for children with intellectual disabilities. And then things, as you know, things progress over time. And in the 50s and 60s, they began developing, the state and across the country began developing other alternatives for people. And it was in the 70s when this state and a couple other states, plus the federal government, created the Federal Education for All Act, the special ed law. And that allowed families to continue to have their sons and daughters at home and have their kid then go to school. Then in the 80s, the state ARC board, I wasn't here at the time, the state ARC board decided to sue the state of Washington to close all 6 schools. And at that time, there were a lot of family members who were part of the state ARC. the state ARC lost that lawsuit, and it shattered the trust between the families whose sons and daughters are in the community as versus the state schools. So for 40 years, there has been a fight that many of you have lived through when we come in front of you. And after 4 studies, since I've been here for the last 30 years, I believe we have a pathway forward where once again, that all the families are moving together. And both Terry Anderson and I, we cried when we were done with this report because it's such a big deal. And so we thank you and we hope you support it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Matt Zuvich with the Washington Federation of State Employees. We represent workers in residential community rehabilitation centers as well as social workers out in the field with a developmental disability population. I was on the Ruckels House work group and represented our members there, and I'm here in support today of this bill. With the folks that were in the room in that Ruckels House work group, I've only been doing this about 14 years, and I was a rookie in there in terms of some of the experience that people have had working in this field. But I have got my share of scars and bumps and bruises from the fights between the community and the folks that live in state institutions over the last 15 years. We support this plan before you in this set of recommendations for a couple of different reasons. One is that it recognizes the need for a safety net that the state is responsible for providing it. It recommends SOLAs, state-run SOLAs. It recommends smaller state-run units for crisis care in the community that are more regional so people can be closer to their home, solve problems, get back to a community placement. It recommends adequate state-run nursing care, such as the proposed nursing facility at Fircrest. And those are all good things that we've been fighting for a long time from my membership's point of view. I think the last thing that I want to tell you is that for our membership to be able to have considered a caseload forecast for the developmental disabilities population is a very important component of this, in our opinion. We've never had enough money. That's why the two components have fought so hard over the same scrap of meat, and a caseload forecast that actually predicted what caseloads were going to be over time, I think is revolutionary, and we support this and recommend it to you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kelly Nesbitt. I'm a family disability advocate. I reside in the 23rd Legislative District. I'm also the parent to a young man who's 28 years old, lives at home, and who has waived his right to institutionalization to receive services in the community. I have a huge concern about this bill regarding families that have not been asked about it. Choices continue to be made in the legislature in Washington state, and families that are in the community are finding out about them afterwards. I contacted the first 6 people on my list that I know who have adults with disabilities who receive waiver services in the community, thereby waiving their right to institutionalization. Not one of them knows of this bill. The community at large, the people who have waived their rights to institutionalization, do not know about this bill. Olmstead specifically states, and this is the opinion of Justice Ginsburg, under Title II of the ADA, states are required to place persons with mental disabilities in community settings rather than an institution where the state's treatment professionals have determined that community placement is appropriate. This is a biggie that's always just overlooked. The transfer from institutional care to a less restrictive setting is not opposed by the affected individual, taking into account the resources available to the state, and then it goes on. So I don't hear choice mentioned in here for families. There has been no robust communications, meetings. There's no consensus. The majority of families that are waiving their rights to institutionalization in the community, who are faltering because of lack of services in the community, are don't even know this is happening, and we deserve to be more informed than what we are. And I would ask that you really require more robust community conversations surrounding this before you decide to eliminate institutions for all but the most significantly impacted for 6 months in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll bring up the next panel, Cheryl Strange, Jeff Carter, and then also Amber Leaders with the Governor's Office.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Cheryl Strange, and I have the privilege of serving as your secretary for the Department of Social and Health Services. I am here today in support of Senate Bill 6419. The recommendations for reform of services and supports for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities noted in the Ruckelshaus report are thoughtful and informed. They're reasonable, doable, and will create an opportunity for those Washingtonians with intellectual and developmental disabilities to live meaningful, productive, happy, safe lives in the community. The very significant component to this is the general consensus of many parties over many years coming together. As Senator Kaiser noted, the need for ICF, intermediate care facility services, to be centralized in a state institution far away from the community were very important 50 years ago. But today, medical, dental, behavioral health, active treatment supports are available in communities so people can live at home. I do want to address quickly the issue around nursing facility. We're asking for the rebuild of a 110-bed nursing facility. This accounts for 1.3% of the population of 48,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We use a wide gamut of other services as well: adult family homes, assisted living, individual providers, and we work very hard at evaluating individuals in our nursing facilities for a lower level community-based care as well. But we do need these facilities, and I thank you for your support.
So maybe you could respond to some of the criticisms so far of the bill, or the findings of the commission, council. The issues about whether or not a nursing home is actually appropriate as we move forward. The issue of other community-based providers, and the issue of the communication of the need or seeking input from people that are already receiving services. So could you touch on each of those briefly?
I will do my best, Madam Chair. Individuals, again, there's 48,000 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities identified through eligibility criteria to be served by the department. There's approximately, of those 48,000, we have 375 residing in the intermediate care portion, about 260 of those 48,000 residing in a nursing facility on one of the RHC campuses. So it is a very small portion. They are evaluated through PASSAR requirements, levels of care, to determine what level of care those individuals need. Those that are eligible to go to an assisted living or live with an in-home provider or a SOLA do so. This is, we believe, a very small number. The facility itself at Fircrest is in very bad shape, physical plant shape. Ivy growing up through the the heat registers. It was an old naval hospital. It has curtains. It is in very bad physical shape, and we are seeking, as part of this, the Ruckle House Group determined that this was a viable program that they wanted to be supported, and we support those recommendations. With regard to, I think you asked me about our communication. I can tell you that the department, along with other components in the Ruckle House, creates a work group to vest in these, to look at them, to figure out an action plan for these, and represented groups from Friends of Fircrest, family members. I will check in with the woman who just testified about her experience with not being included or knowing about this.
That'd be excellent. Thank you. Amber.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Amber Leaders. I am the Governor's Senior Advisor on Behavioral Health, Aging, and Disability. Thank you for hearing this Governor request bill today. I'm going to make my comments fairly brief. Most other individuals have already said the things that I would say. I was able to join this work group, the Ruckles House Group, in just the spring of this past year, so I haven't been involved that long. But one of the things that was really stood out to me is the collaborative effort that everyone put in, the dedication, and the compromise that was made by a group of individuals that have historically had differing and divergent views on what the path forward is. And so the governor's office has behind this bill, behind creating this task force, because it is a moment in time, an important one, to move our state forward in terms of the services and care we provide for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. As Mr. Black noted, what this bill does is it creates a task force. It is really designed to be the next step in the process. It is not designed to be another look at the issue or another reconsideration. It is designed to be an implementation plan of consensus-based recommendations. And that consensus is to build out a bigger and better community-based system of care and to move away from our state institutions. Just a couple of points that, Madam Chair, you just brought up. There are some points in there about other additional community-based services besides just state-operated living alternatives. One of the things the report talks about is working with our supported living providers to look at rates, considering whether there's a rate structure that might be appropriate, particularly for supported living providers that provide for more complex needs. As Secretary Strange mentioned, there is a real, almost I would call almost a desperate need for new nursing capacity on the Fircrest campus because of the condition of the current buildings, but that doesn't preclude our efforts to also build out community-based nursing care at the same time. But there's a time factor here in terms of being able to provide quality nursing care to the people who are in a facility currently. And I am available for any questions. And I would ask this committee to please support this bill. Thank you.
I want to beg one question here. And my numbers may be wrong because I can't remember stuff disease. But I'm aware that we had, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 19 nursing homes closed last year. Why would the governor be interested in opening a new nursing facility if there are that many facilities across the state that have not had sufficient rates and so have closed their doors now to any patients? So it just seems like the statement from Mr. Lord about the planning and development of a new nursing home facility and then the actual, building from foundation to finished product is going to be quite expensive when we have so many facilities already in our state that would be, from the standpoint of being appropriate for a person who needs nursing home level of care, they were appropriate, but they weren't fiscally able to keep their heads above water. So why would we even in this scenario be talking about building a new facility?
Sure. So the work group did actually discuss that at length and had a number of conversations about exactly that question. The state and the department has looked at some of the other nursing facilities about being possibilities. The problems that I'm aware of that we've encountered in being able to repurpose those nursing facilities are, one, most of them are not large enough. As Secretary Strange mentioned, the current capacity at the Furcrest campus is about 110 individuals. One of the other things that we've heard is that some of these facilities are being repurposed for other uses. I know of one facility that was quite large, but has already been used for assisted living. So it was a factor, it was a consideration, and it was determined that there aren't any facilities that would actually meet the needs. And so in terms of being able to get to additional capacity in the quickest way possible to address the needs who are currently residing on the Furcrest campus, the new facility seems to be the way to go. But it was discussed at length. I mean, it's a fair question, and it's been brought up by other individuals as well.
Any questions for Amber? Senator Walsh.
Thank you,
Whoever I am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was intrigued by Senator Kaiser's statement about money isn't really the issue here, and I think we can all agree on that. And yet I'm terribly disappointed about how quickly the agency jumped on the CMS guideline concerning our pre-vocational workshops, which frankly doing away with the ability for our folks to go out and work in those workshops, and that was a tremendous benefit back in Eastern Washington. And I would just hope that when we're looking at how we are providing services for folks, that we understand and recognize the differences about the services available on this side of the state versus my side of the state. And I have had so many folks that have said we threw the baby out with the bathwater. We lost the respite that employment provided to those folks, and frankly, the income as well, which, yes, they were paid less than minimum wage, and that could have been fixed. But to me, I think sometimes we jump on ideas quickly, and we did not have to interpret the CMS guidelines the way that we did. And I just want to express my concern that I'm certainly hopeful that folks from Eastern Washington were represented on the board as well in this Ruckels House board legislative thing that you did. And I just want to be very clear that sometimes a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work across the state. We find that in many, many disciplines here. And this is one of those where I'm certainly hopeful that we do look at quality of life issues. Again, factoring in the benefits and that these folks already receive, but to be able to get out in the community, ride the bus, be able to work with their peers and other folks in the community, those are vitally important. And now I've got kids sitting on the couch at home because they can only work for 3 hours. So that's one of my biggest concerns is quality of life. And I want to just make sure that as we move forward, we factor in those differences and understand and recognize those differences. Thank you. That wasn't a question. I apologize.
Well,
I agree.
If I can comment on that briefly, I will say that one of the focuses of the report and the recommendations is to do, I think what you're talking about, Senator Walsh, is to ensure that part of this move forward is looking at individualized services and care. And the bill doesn't discuss that, but the report does. And that's a really important piece. This is a comprehensive package of recommendations. It's really important that all of those pieces fit together and that we're designing care and system and services to meet the needs of every individual, and that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I thank you for your comment. I fully agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 6419. My name is Jeff Carter. I'm the treasurer for Action DD, a 501c4 political action committee that advocates for keeping RHCs as a vital part of the continuum of care for our developmentally disabled citizens of Washington State. Our members are primarily family members and guardians of individuals who reside at one of the 4 state RHCs. Our membership also includes other stakeholders who clearly see the absolute necessity for retaining RHCs, especially for the higher needs individuals that are typically the ones who reside there. So speaking on behalf of Action DD and as a family member of a longtime resident of an RHC, my brother Stephen lives at Rainier School, we support Senate Bill 6419 as the next step to facilitate implementation of the Ruckels House Center Work Group recommendations. The work group was comprised of a diverse set of stakeholders working together for over 2 years toward a vision that preserves the expertise of RHCs in the overall continuum of care for DD individuals. The vision also includes much needed expansion of SOLAs and other community-based living arrangements. The role of RHCs, especially the ICFs going forward, has great potential to provide benefits for all DD citizens of Washington. For example, we found that we could find a way to provide specialized care such as dental, adult daycare programs, sensory rooms, and other services to community members who would not need to be residents of RHCs to receive these services. And that's been something that's been talked about for decades, and we found a way, a path to get there. The recent pressure from the federal government through CMS reinterprets the role of the RHCs, most specifically the ICFs, and in the continuum of care. So that makes it all that much more critical to create the task force in order to navigate a way forward to make sure we have the best outcome. So the task force is really an essential mechanism for implementation of the new paradigm of care for our developmentally disabled citizens of Washington.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we have more?
Yep. One last panel, Robert Wardell, Krista Milloffer, and then also there are 6 people who've signed up in pro not wishing to testify, Seth Dawson, Melissa Johnson, Melanie Smith, Bill Moss, Janice Narve, and then Evelyn Perez.
Hi, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Krista Melhofer, and I've worked on behalf of individuals with developmental disabilities for 20 years now. And 6 months ago, I took my favorite position and now am the program administrator for People First of Washington. And we are a group of self-advocates, over 1,000 individuals across Washington state, most of them whom have an intellectual or developmental disability. And so in my new role, I've been going around and seeing what my constituents are interested in, and there is one universal message. And I'm going to deliver that message from our president. His name is Michael Raymond. He was one of our first presidents, and he's come back around to serve again 40 years later as the current president and couldn't be here today. So he would like to testify. I would like to tell them we need to close the institutions down. Please tell them my story. Hear my story. I've been working on this for a long time. Tell them that I hope they shut them down. And then you can find his story on informingfamilies.org, Mike's story. Mike was a longtime resident at Rainier. He went in when he was 3, got out when he was 23, ended up getting his girlfriend out. They got married. He's got a child. She's a teacher. He's got grandchildren. He owned a house and lives in Pierce County.
We know him well.
Yeah.
Yes. And Robert as well. Thank you for coming today.
You're welcome. My name is Robert McDowell Wardell. I used to live at Rainier State School from 1966 all into adulthood, and now I live out in the community-wise. But if people with disabilities wasn't involved in the community, I would have said work together, but I guess we didn't get.
He's trying to say that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities weren't a part of the group, and I don't think they're slotted to become a part of the group. And so again, we're in a people are making decisions about us without us scenario, and that's concerning.
So Robert, how many years have you been coming to Olympia to talk to legislators about your ideas and concerns?
A long time, a long time.
So I've been here 20 years and you've been coming all that time. And we do appreciate your advocacy. I know you moved out of the 27th district. Where did you move to? The 29th, I think, or?
No, 20, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to be in the 29th, but my payee didn't think about it in time, so.
Well, we're glad you're still in Pierce County. So with that, I think we're That's the end of our hearing on this bill, and we have a lot to think about as we think about moving the bill forward. So if you have particular ideas about amendments, please make sure that those get delivered to the staff. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And now we will close that hearing on Senate Bill 6419.